After about 30 hours, I 100% did Life is Strange double exposure. I obtained all the collectibles and chose every option, unlocking the platinum trophy. So this review will obviously contain major spoilers. I got pushback from my Sonic X Shadow Generations despite this being a 100% review, so let this serve as your first and only warning. The narrative takes place about 10 years after the events of the first game. Max has mostly left her life at Blackwell Academy behind along with Arcadia Bay to start anew. After traveling throughout America, Max is now a photographer in residence at one of the most prestigious colleges in the country. She has new friends, a new life, and a new beginning. The adventure only allows two canon events to be chosen at the beginning of the adventure, whether Chloe lived or died during Max's journey in Life is Strange 1. The title handles this choice tastefully, only allowing certain events to run parallel with her new life, but offering enough distinguished elements making the change profound. For example, if Chloe lived, Max still follows her on social media, and depending if you were in a romantic relationship with her, it will slightly change the dialogue. If Chloe died during the events of the first game, Max will remain connected with Joyce, Chloe's mother, and keeps tabs on her with her new life without Chloe or David. Max has a new set of friends here, such as her new close friend, Safi. Immediately introduced, Safi is the daughter of the president of the college, Dr. Yasmin. Safi is charismatic, bold, strong-willed, very popular in the school, and a skilled writer and poet. However, she's brash and prone to selfish actions towards those she doesn't care for, and she often incentivizes hurting people who wronged her in some way in the most profound way possible. The next close friend is Safi's best friend, Moses, who is a physicist and astronomer who cares deeply for Safi and respects Max. Other supporting characters include Max's students such as Reggie and Diamond, the executive assistant to the president of the school, Vin, the bartender, Amanda, and many others. Each character is well written with distinct personalities and traits that Max can foster a relationship with or destroy it completely. The primary focus of the narrative is to solve a murder mystery. Safi dies halfway through the first episode, and Max must use her new powers to try and save her. Unlike the first game, Max has an entirely new set of abilities. She can teleport between two timelines where the person is alive or dead, or has completely different interactions with what happened in the previous world, with the common connection being whether Safi died or lived. These two worlds are fittingly called the living and dead world, and Max can not only teleport between the two, but create an aurora that allows her to see into the other world or even teleport items between realities. By episode 3, the game establishes much higher consequences, not just the death of Safi, but instead a storm similar to the one seen in Arcadia Bay in Life is Strange 1. But the very existence of people are also at risk, as we see a character immediately get consumed by interacting with one of their other selves, erasing them completely from both timelines and having no record that they ever existed, making things even worse. Alongside that, Max was responsible for Safi's death according to an image that she found at the crime scene, which creates a much difficult situation. The story has some highlighted moments, including a moment that most longtime Life is Strange fans have been waiting for since the beginning. However, I did notice the story did give certain characters special treatment. Moses, for example, commits a felony-level crime during the story, admits to the crime, and dodges accountability by playing the race card despite being guilty, and even has the gall to speak down to Max if she decides to cooperate with the detective who's investigating the issue. Moses expresses extreme distaste for the cop investigating the case despite the guy just doing his job, although poorly, and Moses is 100% guilty in this situation, so it just seems very questionable that Max doesn't call him out on this, or at least give the player an option to call him out that what he did was 100% wrong and the guy's just doing his job. Another issue happens with Safi's mother, Dr. Yasmin. A critical story point involves a student taking their own life, and while the teacher responsible is 100% at fault, Yasmin knew what happened and chose to hide it for the sake of prestige and the school itself, even bribing another student to remain silent who happened to be a close friend of that student. Those who played the first game will notice parallels between Raymond Wells and Dr. Yasmin, both who use their position and power to give special treatment or do unethical things for their own benefit. Yasmin was just as responsible, and while Safi explains that her mother talked to her about it and forgave her, It's rather ludicrous that Max would dismiss the fact that as a leader of the school, Yasmin is responsible for protecting the students at all costs, even from the teachers. It's also a little weird considering that Max does call Yasmin out on one of her issues, but for this, something that's utterly profound involving a student's life, she simply chooses to ignore it and just focus on the teacher responsible, who shouldn't even be in that teaching position, considering that Yasmin knew what happened and chose to just sweep it under the rug. As for romance options, Max has two options, Amanda and Vin. Amanda's relationship feels rushed. Right after the first part of chapter 1, you can start flirting with her, whereas Vin is more of a slow burn. I enjoyed Vin's relationship a bit more because unlike Amanda, his character has more layers. You can find out that he grew up in poverty, worked his way up, even becoming the president of the Abraxas Drama Club, and has demons such as a drinking problem and masks his cowardice with fake confidence, but tries to do the right thing. Amanda is charismatic and cares for others, but that's really it. She doesn't have any other interesting elements, but she's always at Max's side and always tries to be the beacon of light. Out of all the characters in the game, Amanda is definitely the constant, but because of that, her character just simply falls flat in comparison to the rest of the cast. There are a lot more other characters within the story, such as Loretta, who runs a very popular true crime podcast, and a lot of other professors, such as Lucas and Gwen, who can become more hostile or compliant with Max depending on her actions towards them. However, there are some characters Max simply cannot dissolve or weaken relationships with, such as Amanda, Vin, or Moses, which I found rather strange. I would have found it incredible if you could literally make Moses into your worst enemy, seeing that he was such a close friend to Safi. There's only one real friction issue with them, but for the most part, he just instantly forgives you. Granted, it's a really good reason why he forgives you, but I wish there was more profound situations where you can end up hostile with a character who once was on your side. Overall, I did enjoy the story, and I felt that there were enough layers to keep players thinking about how it'll end, and the ending definitely is satisfying, especially for those of us who are interested in the power situation of Life is Strange. But when it comes to the overall shocking value that was established in the very first Life is Strange game, it never reaches those heights. In fact, it feels like they're trying to tone back on those elements that made the franchise such a hit, but here it's a lot more tamer than Max's first outing. Max will spend a large amount of time at her home, the college, and the local popular bar, the Snappin' Turtle. All the areas have their distinct charm with plenty of NPCs around to make everything feel alive. You'll see students and teachers talking about their lives, what's going on in current events, and lots of things for Max to interact with and remark on. I did wish we did have more areas to explore in the college, as we are limited to the main outside area, the admin building, which includes the library, and the main social area called the Fab. Given the school is huge, it did feel smaller than Blackwell Academy. The gameplay remains largely the same. Max will make critical choices throughout the game that will alter her relationships around her. These highlighted through the game with very critical decision markers, and there are also minor decisions carrying less weight, such as changing the grades of a student. The biggest gameplay element is Max's powers, of course, which are a bit more tame compared to the time travel abilities. Max can travel through the realities of the living and the dead world and create an aurora that allows her to see between those realities. And perhaps her coolest ability is the ability to bring items from both timelines into the current world she's in. The only issue is that you can't really use this power at will. It's only used at very exact situations, and it's never explained why. This is a shame considering it could have been a huge puzzle element within the game, but it's only limited to scripted situations. As for using this power to bring other people into different realities, well, they answer that in Chapter 3 with the consequence of interacting with your other half is a fate worse than death. As for the other Max, the game doesn't really answer that question, which is a huge letdown. Whether the two Maxes are acting in sync so they cannot interact with one another is left on the table. They never really address this, which is a bit confusing, but they do hint about it, but immediately decide never to bring that up ever again. This new power does create a huge narrative plot hole though. Unlike Max's time travel powers, which can erase any previous actions, here Max does indeed disappear and reappear between the timelines. You would assume that one of the most prestigious colleges in the country, or the most popular bar where all the college students gather, will have cameras everywhere, but they don't. There was only one time cameras are used within the story for a situation involving Professor Gwen being accused for a crime. I can excuse this for gameplay purposes, as if Max had to worry about constantly people seeing her transport between worlds, it would have become very annoying. But at some point, you have to question the competency of a lot of people within this reality. It also seems that many of the characters are unable to make the most basic of actions, such as Max being unable to hide a photo from a cop investigating Sophie's murder while his back is turned, or trespassing on private property without a warrant and being unable to call the police station saying this cop did this, or everyone unable to see Max going through a professor's office that has large publicly available windows in one of the biggest areas within the school that should also have cameras in their office. Or when Max breaks into a professor's briefcase, the guy decides not to threaten her position and getting her expelled, which is within his right, and her sending that private information to another individual, which is also illegal. You see, it seems that common sense is absent even among the most academic of people. This is especially present and confusing when it regards Sophie's murder. Everyone is ruling it as self-termination, can't say the word because of YouTube, despite her being shot in the heart with no gun in sight and her body left on a bench sitting upright. There's also no standout scene similar to Kate in Life is Strange 1. Kate's entire sequence was a combination of everything Max did, and after becoming too reliant on Max's rewinding power, all of that was gone. Now all that was standing between Kate and an early end was Max. It was a profoundly unnerving situation that made Life is Strange a standout game against other narrative-driven games, but there's nothing that compares to that in Life is Strange Double Exposure. There are collectibles in the way of photos and pictures Max can take, and all of them can be found using the game's Explorer mode, which allows you to explore the various chapters within the game and skip through the dialogue. The game only tracks photos found when selecting sub-chapters and not the photos that Max can take. Everything is tracked universally, so you don't have to do everything in one file, especially since some photos are exclusive to certain choices. I did wish the developers include a full tracking system for not only the collectibles, but certain choices that are linked to trophies, seeing that much of the community is still uncertain about what actions are needed for certain trophies. Like, for example, you need to double expose certain photos to obtain the Fame Fatale trophy, but the game never mentions this ever in the description or when collecting these collectibles. You can also explore other options using the Explorer feature, but the game cuts off after the subchapter is completed. You'll have to replay the entire chapter to see certain long-term effects with Lucas or Gwen, but it does become time-consuming seeing that you cannot skip dialogue when using the replay option. If you do choose to start from a different section within the chapter, you have to create an entirely new save file, and there are 5 in total. When you finish a chapter, the game gives you a percentage of what decisions other players made, along with all the minor choices available to Max that the player may have missed. The soundtrack for Double Exposure is absolutely amazing. Music has always played a massive role in Life is Strange, and here is no exception. I did wish we had a sound test option in the extra menu for replaying some of these iconic songs. We do get a description of what this song is, but I wish there was an option to play it within the extras menu. The voice work here is also absolutely amazing. I have absolutely no negative criticism against the sound quality of this game. It's absolutely amazing. It has a collection of soft and hard pieces peppered into complimentary dialogue and moments of solitude. It's amazing, and I absolutely love it. Is Life is Strange Double Exposure the best return for Max Caulfield? Well, it's okay. Max has changed since the events of Blackwall Academy. She's more outgoing and willing to take charge of a situation, even willing to stand against people she's cared about once if it goes against what she believes in. The narrative doesn't have the same level of intensity as the first Life is Strange game, and it seems they're less willing to dive or experiment with sensitive topics, but it serves as a great building block for another installment starring Max Caulfield, which they confirmed at the end of the game will return. I'm also excited to see them finally address the power situation, and perhaps we'll finally get some sort of explanation of what exactly these powers and where they come from. Life is Strange Double Exposure isn't the best game in the series, but it has revelations and interesting mysteries to keep players who've enjoyed the series on the hook until the very end. I hope that we do get more intense situations like the first Life is Strange game, and they start experimenting with much more deep-seated problems, but for now, this is a pretty good installment for those seeking Max to return for another game.